Assalamu alaikum, my dear friends. I hope you are doing well your side. I'm certainly doing well my side. So in this video, I want to keep it fairly short and I want to do a follow-up on the previous video. And I'm going to talk a bit more about marriage in Islam, in the Qur'an, based on the Qur'an. Now, I just want to summarize and then I will reiterate the points I made in my previous video. Now, let me just summarize the key points I made in the previous video. First of all, the primary argument that I presented to you, and which I said this is my thesis, is that the Islam that we are familiar with, the Islam as it emerged at the end of, or at the beginning of the year at the beginning of the second millennium, Christian era, is not an Islam that was there 1,000 years ago. It's not an Islam that was here 1,400 years ago. And we need to, as Muslims, stop thinking that we have something that has stayed the same for 1,400 years. It certainly has not, my dear friends. Now, I'm especially referring to those who live in Western societies, those who are very affected by the West and by Western culture, by the Judeo-Christian worldview. Extremely affected by that worldview. Now, the way in which Islam is affected is not by having questioned the concepts or by having eliminated some of the key concepts, but by having adjusted the meaning of those concepts. And in my previous video, I listed such a concept as the concept of nikah, the concept of marriage. Now, that concept has undergone adjustment, redefinition, a shifting in meaning in the light of the dominant narrative, the dominant culture, which in our times, or at least for the past 500 years, has been the Judeo-Christian narrative, the narrative as it emerged from Western Europe. Now, that is the thesis, and I gave certain arguments in favor of that thesis. Right? Practically around you, and whether you're an Egyptian, whether you're a Saudi Arabian, whether you are a Syrian, Iraqi, South African, British, American, Australian, even Malaysian, wherever you are, Indian, subcontinent, Pakistan, you are touched by Western European colonialism. There's no country on earth that can claim not to have been touched. It's almost all pervasive, the hand and the touch of Western colonialism. So in other words, the Judeo-Christian worldview. And I'm advancing the position that marriage is one of the concepts in Islam that has undergone such redefinition in its meaning. Now, how do we get back to the original meaning? How do we get back to the original meaning and the understanding of marriage? Is we have to go to the Qur'an, al-Furqan, which is the yardstick. Furqan means the yardstick, the standard, the control, the test, the criterion. That's all meanings of the word Furqan. The criterion, the test, the control, the means of verification, the yardstick, the benchmark. All of these words refer to the word Furqan, meanings of the word Furqan. How do we know how far we have shifted away from the original idea of marriage? Is we have to go to the Furqan, we have to measure, we have to now recalibrate ourselves in terms of that Furqan. Now, here's some of the points that came out. One of the points that came out is that I don't believe the Furqan, the Qur'an, the yardstick, the control, the book, the criterion, the Qur'an that we know of, expresses marriage in exactly the same way as the Christians express it when it comes to this commitment to a lifelong relationship. I cannot see that image, that depiction of marriage coming out quite that clearly. And we have to assume that it is perhaps implicit in the word nikah. It is perhaps implicit in the word ziwaj. These are both words that are used for marriage, nikah or ziwaj. But in the word nikah or in the word ziwaj, it's also not implicit. You cannot, nikah simply means to have a get together, a merging, a partnership of the two. In fact, if you look at the meaning of the word nikah, there are strong opinions that it actually doesn't just refer to marriage, which is the dominant view, but there are very strong views that it just in fact could refer to intercourse, to having sex. And so that is why nikah is almost like license, or the framework, or the agreement that makes sexual relations lawful. And I'm not making that up. Let me show you some of the dictionaries, what they say. Let's just take a moment and look at the translations here. I've got Muhammad Assad's translation. Let's take one example where the word nikah is used. That is chapter 24, verse 60. The Arabic reads, وَالْقَوَاعِدُ مِنَ النِّسَاءِ الَّتِي لَا يَرْجُونَ نِكَاحًا. Right? And he translates that, the word nikahan there, and know that women advanced in years who no longer feel any sexual desire. So he says nikah has no need for sex. Nikah here equals sexual desire. And I can add that Muhammad Assad is not the only one. The majority translates it as marriage. But there's also actually more that actually look at that as referring to sexual desire. Here's Abdul Halim, also recognized translation. No blame will be attached to the elderly women who are not hoping for sex. So another one translates it like that. And they do have reason, because if you look at the dictionary here, the dictionary says nikah in the common parlance of people, amma, means matrimony, matrimonies, and sexual intercourse. You see? So it's there. It's in the dictionary, that is in Ma'ani. But if you look at even another dictionary, let's see another one. Let's just try a very old dictionary. Let's try this one here. Then you look at the word nakaha, and we have to look at nikah here. Nikah sometimes or also sometimes used, that is sometimes according ta, that it signifies coitus, and coitus without marriage, and marriage without coitus. So I don't want to go into these things and really speak about such sensitive topics, but we need to delve into it. We are all human beings, and these things have echoes in real life. Believe me, I often get confronted by these issues in real life, and people approach me and they ask me what am I thinking, and you have to sort out your understanding for you to give a proper and a correct and an answer that is aligned with the Quran. Okay, so where are we? We were looking at the story that I started telling before, early on in this video, was that I do believe that Islam or the Quran or that understanding of the word marriage has shifted to become more aligned to the Christian or the Jewish understanding of what marriage is. Now, the only way we can test and we can recalibrate our understanding of marriage is to go to the Quran. Now, if we go to the Quran, the very word nikah doesn't really align with the word marriage, as you can see, and that's where we are right now. The word ziwaj or zoj, it's similarly, it's used many other times. It's more used as a pairing or a coupling or togetherness or companionship. If you go and read the Quran and see where the word ziwaj or zoj or zoja is used. So, first of all, there's no intrinsic meaning that this is an eternal pledge right to the end, to death, till death do us part. And I know I'm going to ruffle feathers because Muslims really feel comfortable with having aligned the understanding of marriage to the Christian understanding. But in the Quranic understanding, it doesn't have that notion of till death do us part. Now, it's fantastic. The Quran nowhere says that you should not get married and stay married. The Quran, in fact, sees it as a partnership. So it's any partnership. We would like to cultivate any partnership to make it as healthy, as long standing as possible, as prolific and as fruitful as possible. That's why we form partnerships, is to get the benefits of the partnership. And marriage is similarly such a partnership. So there's nothing in the Quran also that says that it should be a weak partnership. You should try and break it at any. No, I'm not denying that we should try and invest in that partnership. In fact, the Quran makes other requests that if there's trouble in the marriage, bring one member from his family, one member from her family, and try to resolve it. So the Quran does have resolution mechanisms. It has Surah 4 verse 34 where it actually goes to extreme points and says that, you may refuse to share a bed, you may do this, you may do that, and whatever. Right. So the fact that there's a partnership, that nikah means a partnership, that we should strive to preserve it, that it is something healthy, that it should be something fruitful, that goes without saying, and I'm not denying and disputing that. But what I am saying is that there are other features that the Quran adds, and we need to look at those features. There are other concepts around the concept of marriage that we cannot say we wish them away. And one of these concepts is polygamy. Now, polygamy, I understand the Quran makes a very clear request that if you cannot deal justly, then you should only be married to one wife. So there's a very high standard set there. But we cannot deny that polygamy is there. Now you're going to argue with me, no, if you read the whole verse, it actually says to the orphans and so on. But it says, if you cannot deal justly with the orphans, then marry the women. So in other words, if those orphans are not socially going to be integrated well enough into the Muslim community, then rather make that women your family, marry them. You understand? That is, the verse was revealed, the verse, I think it's at the beginning of chapter 4. I'm not sure, I think it's early on, very early on. That verse is revealed in Medina when a lot of these women came who were without husbands. Right? A lot of the Quraysh and so on, their women ended up there with no husbands. Now the Muslim men or the community there were required to integrate those orphans within their society. But how do you integrate children into a society if their mothers are not integrated into that society? Or if those grown girls themselves who are not the girls who are now women, when they themselves are not directly related. We're living in a tribal environment where a member of the tribe gets the protection of the tribe. So the Quran then says, if you cannot integrate these children thoroughly or fairly into your tribe, into your community, then marry the women. So you create bonds, you create family ties with the mothers or with the grown girls, marital age girls. And then, of course, they are more than just a welfare case. They are more than just a basket case. They now belong in the community as members of a family. And the Quran is very realistic. It is through marriage, through sex, through relations, through love, that those children become truly members of the community. And that is how I read the verse on polygamy. So polygamy, we cannot wish it away. It's there. The other concept that we cannot wish away is the concept of al-yamin. It is there and we cannot wish it away, and we need to make sense of it. Now, some of you are going to say, no, but that refers to slaves and that is long gone days and forget about it now, scratch out those verses. No, you cannot. The Quran is a living text, and we need to find ways in which those verses gain relevance. Now, the Prophet did not, the text of the Quran did not speak about slaves. There are other words for slaves. It speaks about that which your right hand has placed you in control of, in possession of, in responsibility of. Al-yamin, that which your right hand has brought you in control of. And clearly, I offer a meaning. Al-yamin is women, and you might not be I might not know women like that. Doesn't mean that there's not a society where there are women who are in a way fall under the custodianship of men, not married to them, but actually falling under their custodianship. Now, I could think of, in modern times, women who, if there are no jails in a society, that these women have to, they have some sort of a man that has to, some sort of parole control over them, if there's no prisons. Some sort of man has to, be responsible for them. Or some women that just completely are unable to fend for themselves, and they are then placed under now in the modern state, the state plays that role. So, well and good. If the state plays that role, that's great. But if there's a society where the state does not play that role, then these men have to take care of these women. And what the Quran is saying, al-yamin, is a man is already caring for a woman, working, earning, a living and providing for them. And the Quran is saying you may marry those women for lesser stringent conditions. And that is how I make sense of al-yamin. Now, you can tell me, Anwar, there's a different way that al-yamin makes sense. Fine. Give it to me in the comments. The third thing I mentioned is that divorce is an option offered in the Quran. And we shouldn't make divorce something that is unattainable, impossible to achieve, as the sheikhs and the molanas have done. In fact, divorce is an option open to the two parties, to the man and the woman. And those of you who wrote to me and said to me, Anwar, you gave a very masculine, misogynistic reading of the Quran. Yeah, let me then correct myself and say that divorce does not state in the Quran that it is a masculine, a male prerogative. And we need to move towards the assumption and the understanding that divorce can come from either party. As I said in the previous video, it takes two to tango. If party A and party B, if any of the two parties must have the option to withdraw from the agreement, that goes for any agreement. It goes for a lease agreement. It goes for any rental agreement. If you want to, if either of the two parties to the agreement feel that that no longer serves the purpose, they are free to pull out of the agreement. And that is why I say divorce is an option open to both parties. So there's no male preference in my reading of the Quran. If you feel that the man must divorce, yes, you'll give me a verse that says, if you divorce women, this and there, it doesn't give that power solely to the man. Now, what I've done is, what people around me have done is, even if the Quran doesn't implicitly state it, we have actually implicitly named it in the marriage of our daughters. So, for example, in the marriage of my daughter, we made it very implicit that we will offer that right to her and to her husband, the right of divorce. So there's the third concept, divorce, which is illegal in the Christian Catholic tradition. Islam says it is fine, it is normal, it is natural, provided you followed the necessary effort at reconciling. In fact, the Quran gives 3 opportunities for reconciling. Actually 2. On the third disintegration of the marriage, or on the third, dissolution or breaking up of the couple, it's permanent. So the Quran disallows remarrying after 3 opportunities to get back together. So like I say, the marriage of the Quran differs in 3 ways so far, in terms of the multiple, in polygamy, in terms of al-yamin, in terms of how much easier it is to access a divorce. Then the 4th area where there's a difference is in the dowry. Now this is also something I want to offer those who said I was misogynistic, or I was, being a male chauvinist. I'm calling for the reintroduction of the dowry and to bring it back to its true meaning. You see, like I said, divorce is something which is open to both parties, but the dowry is really the guarantee that the divorce does not take place frivolously. You see, that is really the power that the woman wields. And if a man loves a woman, we need to put that test there, that if you feel that this is your wife, that you will make a stable, long-term commitment, then the dowry needs to be of such a nature that it confirms that attitude of the man. And I would say dowries that cover 2 years of living expense is not irrational. If you go to a couple that want to get married, successful businesswoman, successful professional woman, successful man, and you bind them in marriage, the dowry of 2 years of subsistence of the woman, which can come to a huge amount, let's say in our currency, $250,000, half, whatever. That should not be unheard of, even if the man has to bond or sign do a savings account, do a seeding of policy, seeding of stocks and bonds, investment account, whatever form it may take. It might not necessarily be to put down a bag of money, but it could take any form where that type of guarantee, like a bond, could be registered in the benefit of the woman. And so the dowry is the 4th one that I say differs with the Western or the Christian or the Judeo-Christian vision of what marriage is. And it completely is in favor of the woman. You understand what I'm saying? And then I added a 5th area that I introduced, and I said to you, look, this is something that I can read from the text, and it was something that is confirmed in the historical books, is that there is something called a temporary arrangement where marriage or where sex can take place between 2 consenting adults who agree that it is not going to be a lifelong partnership, who agree that is going to be something that will not last for more than a particular time. And I've given you practical examples where a man works away from home. He comes from Pakistan or India. He stays in South Africa for 5 years or 10 years or 3 years, or he stays in the Middle East for 2 years just to build up a nest egg or endowment. If he meets a woman there and there's an agreement that this is not going to be till death do us part, I have to go back to my country, you're not prepared to move. I'm saying that is one of the options. You can't argue against it because the Quran clearly mentions the word فَمَسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهِ مِنْهُنَّ فَأْتُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ, and whatever enjoyment you derived from them, then reimburse them, or then make sure that they are well looked after financially. So these are the five areas that I mentioned in the previous video where I feel that the Islamic view of marriage and sex differ vastly from the Judeo-Christian understanding. Now, if you tell me, no, Anwar, I think you're completely wrong, we like more in line with the Judeo-Christian understanding, then you must understand, you must explain to me, what is dowry? Are you going to make the dowry $5? Then you must explain to me what is al-yamin. Are we going to scratch out those verses? Then you must explain to me what is the verse on polygamy. Are we going to scratch out that verse? Then you must explain to me the verses on divorce. How do we deal with it? You will be moving away from the Quranic worldview, my friend. You will be creating a new worldview which is Christian and Jewish biased. And you see, the problem is what you are doing is you are not conceding that the Quran worldview encompasses the Christian worldview. It encompasses the idea of a monogamous, lifelong relationship. And I know many relationships like that. It encompasses that. It accepts it. It admits to it. But it doesn't go so far as to restrict it to that. And so there are cases, and I have practical examples, my friends, I have practical examples of a marriage to a woman where the woman displays certain clear problems. I mean, I don't want to go into details. And where the husband, with that woman's agreement, goes and marries a second wife, and together they complete each other. Wife number 2 completes the situation. That woman is looked after, financially secured, and husband number 1 is fulfilled in all ways, and wife number 2 is fulfilled in many ways. She doesn't need the guy there every day. She's financially successful. She's a professional. I've seen it working. I've seen working the divorce being less stringent. Because I've seen couples where it is a problem. The marriage is not working. There's physical abuse. There's emotional abuse. And the wife needs to get out of that situation. And I'm telling you that divorce should not be made impossible for that woman to get out of that marriage. The dowry. I've seen it where Muslim men marry 1, 2, 3 girls for a year. And then they run off and they're tired of those girls because the dowry was $5, $10. But if the dowry was 100,000, he would think twice before losing 100,000. You would lose 100,000 if it's really necessary to separate from that wife. And so, my friends, we don't love the message of the Quran just because we like the Quran. It is because that book offers solutions. That book offers us success. It makes us of the muflihun, of those who are successful, who thrive, who prosper, who flourish, instead of those who are being kept in a grip by the vision of priests. The Quran liberates us to pursue the natural inclinations, biological, physiological inclinations that we have. It frees us up for that. In closing, sex and the relationship between men and women it's an idea that has been weaponized in the West. And because of the stringent and the restrictions placed on young men for getting married, for sleeping with a woman, you get mental illnesses developing. You get other forms of abuse developing. We just had a case now where a man was accused of having abused his child and went to jail for 10 years. And the child, the daughter who made the accusation, when she was 21 years old, it's just a recent case, you can look it up. She said, "Sorry, Dad, I lied." And his dad came out of jail. 10 years. That is how sex, abuse, pedophilia. All of these things are things that are mental aberrations, perversions, and they come about because we are restricting the exercise, the expression, the natural expression by men, young men, old men, middle-aged men, young women, middle-aged women, older women. We are restricting their ability to express themselves in a variety of ways. Now you come here and you say, no, one wife, one man, till death do us part, that is the way. That's not the Qur'an way, my friend. That's your way. Don't impose your meaning on the Qur'an. And the Qur'an liberates women by means of the dowry, by means of giving them the right of divorce. It liberates men by not forcing them into a relationship where women assume that they are trapped in a lifelong relationship. Nobody's trapped in a marriage. No man, no woman. I hope that clarifies it a bit more, my friends, and that we are creating, what we are doing is we are putting in place an understanding of the concept of the Quran that can work in the real world, because that's where we work. We work in the real world. We don't work in the university, in the academy, and what we produce here, the understanding, can directly benefit men and women. I hope that was useful. Tell me in the comments what you think. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.